You're listening to the Vocabbett podcast, where I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself using my unique and research-backed story-based method. On this podcast, I'm sharing the best tips and tricks for a more enriched vocabulary and pain-free test day. Hello, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Vocabbett podcast. I'm Erica Abbott, a former English and history teacher, the author of the young adult novel Ahead of Her Time, and the founder of the eponymously named vocabulary company Vocabbett. So in the last episode of the Vocabbett podcast, I discussed how, in my opinion, we should be stepping back and reevaluating our entire education system during this time. Schools are discussing implementing huge changes right now, but they seem to be pretty COVID-19 specific. How do we incorporate more outdoor learning, family-style dining, things like that? And while that's incredibly important, so is the fact that our broader education system is, quite frankly, not working for millions of students. According to the Pew Research Center, and this study was picked up by the National Education Association, among many other places, 70% of America's teens describe anxiety and depression as, quote, a major problem among peers in their community. 55% described bullying as a major problem. These came in ahead of drugs and alcohol, which, at least when I was growing up, tended to be the main things that parents worried about. If you listen to students today, they're saying that anxiety, depression, and bullying are an even bigger problem. Quite frankly, I don't know how to fix this. I'm not here to give you a TED Talk and say, okay, do this, this, and this is the way forward. But I am here to share some ideas, and hopefully they will add to the conversation and help you, your family, or your school moving forward. One option, which I dove into in the last episode, was to essentially combine the best of the current options available and create a new system. Combine the academic expertise of traditional schooling, the independence of homeschooling, and the more rewarding than, sitting in a classroom at least, the more rewarding experiences you can get by studying abroad and having apprenticeships and internships and volunteer work. Our current model has so much waste built into it between your commute, waiting for school to start, walking from class to class, waiting for the teacher to ask so-and-so to stop talking for the 400th time, doing busy work on subjects that you've already gotten instead of just moving on when you're proficient. It's an irreversible drain on your most finite resource, which is time. And I can't help but wonder if, now that we're no longer beholden to the physical schoolhouse to get an education, whether some families will say, you know what, I'd rather use all of those wasted hours to relax, recharge my batteries, or be creative, or travel, or get an internship, or volunteer, or do something that really furthers my life and my interests in a way that sitting in a classroom doesn't. I think that unless schools become really proactive right now, you're going to start to see more and more families splintering off and doing something like what I just described, forming some kind of a cohort and doing a mix of online learning and tutors, and then using all the remaining time and money to really further their kids' lives. Further their interests, whether it's cooking or engineering or whatever. You have a lot more time to develop your unique skill set when you are A, not being shaped into the same mold as everyone else, and B, not wasting what sometimes feels like half your life each week. Now, I want to be clear that I am not suggesting that everyone go this route. I am not saying 2 + 2 is 5, here is the answer. Not at all. I know this wouldn't work for everyone for a whole host of reasons, and I started to dive into it in the last episode. However, I'm also fairly certain that 2 + 2 isn't 3, and I'm fairly certain that the system that we currently have isn't the right answer for everyone either. A system where anxiety and depression run rampant, and to top it all off, kids are wasting so much time that they could be spending developing their talents and their passions. I really would not be surprised if we see a more autonomous trend emerge in the coming years, and I think that that's probably better for everyone. So let's say now that you're an educator or you're on the board or something like that, and you want to make changes to the existing model. You're not quite ready to go into sovereign schooling, but you agree that something needs to change. How do you do that? Again, I cannot tell you the right answer, but I can tell you where I would start. I would create, at least for high schoolers, maybe even for 7th and 8th grade on, a program modeled after what's called May program at Breck School. It's the school I attended, and while I told you about some issues I had with it in the last episode. I never really felt like I fit in socially. Their academics were top-notch. And here's what May program was and is at Breck. Every May, you more or less get to choose what you want to study and how you want to grow. Your regular classes end at the end of April, you take your finals, and you are done with regular classes at the end of April. 9th and 10th graders stay on campus and take pretty unconventional electives. We're not talking about, do you want to be an AP Euro or Euro? Yes, that's an option, but that's for during the school year. I just took a look at the website to see what's currently being offered, and they're talking about everything from build your own 3D printer to write your novel to cryptography and courses on the Beatles for kids who are interested in music. They give you the option to really dive into classes that interest you and further your interests and your passions in some way. Here's where it really gets good though. 11th and 12th graders engage in off-campus projects that, quote, speak to their passions. And in a nutshell, this is based on my memory of it, you essentially either volunteer, get an internship, or study abroad. And some of my best memories of Breck are from May program. One of the years I chose to study abroad in Mexico, and it honestly paved the path for the best and most influential experiences for the rest of my life. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I then went on to spend my senior year of high school studying abroad in Italy. And I really don't think that I would have had the confidence to go somewhere for an entire year had I not at least dipped my toes in the water in Mexico first. After Italy, I spent a year in college, my junior year of college, studying abroad in the Middle East. I spent the fall semester in Egypt and the spring semester in Israel. And I definitely would not have had the guts to do that had I not already spent a year in Italy. And not to be too hyperbolic here, but without those years abroad, my book would not exist because basically all of that history I learned abroad. And Vocabbett itself, I don't think would exist either because my whole vocabulary building method is modeled after what I learned of language acquisition studying all these languages. So obviously studying abroad made a huge impact on me, but some of my friends did mock trial. Others volunteered with environmental organizations or did marketing internships. And that really spoke to them. A lot of this work was really pivotal in landing summer internships, which also helped people get their first jobs. I think the future of education has to include a little bit more respect for the individual student. We have to start giving kids a little bit more autonomy over their own lives. And quite frankly, 17 and 18-year-olds, they're not really kids anymore. We don't need to be creating a bunch of little carbon copies of each other. Yes, we need to provide a basic education for every student, and there does need to be oversight with May program, for sure. If a kid says that they're doing an internship and they're going off campus, yeah, obviously verify that that internship exists. But it's also time to give students room to grow a little bit. This is just my speculation, but I sometimes wonder if bullying isn't rooted in boredom. If you give a bully something more interesting and important to do, they might just be too busy to ruin some poor kid's life. And similarly, if you take the bullied kid out of that situation and put them in the real world where it doesn't matter if they wear glasses or whatever, they will start to develop confidence that they might not be able to get when they're the butt of every joke in their prison school. I don't have a perfect model for how to move forward, but I can tell you that while we are making changes to school for the fall, it would be a mistake not to look at the system at large and think about how we can address some of the deeper issues. If educators don't become really proactive here, I think you're going to start seeing more and more families taking matters into their own hands. And why shouldn't they when they can get a world-class education online now and have far more freedom? The way around this for schools is to provide those opportunities for growth and individuality within the curriculum, within the existing framework. How you do that is up to you. I personally would suggest doing something like May program at Breck, but give students the opportunity to really grow and do what lights them up. Because in the era of the internet, schools don't have a monopoly on education anymore, and people no longer have to put up with the bad in order to get the good. As with every industry, we have to continue innovating to make a better product. And if teachers and administrators don't do it, I wouldn't be surprised if students and parents start to do it themselves.